and welcome. My name is Kayla Altman, and I am a Communities Coordinator at ASUG headquarters, and I'd like to welcome you to today's webcast, Master Data Governance for Hard Dollar Savings, and thank you all for participating today. A few housekeeping notes to please keep in mind. All participants' lines are currently on mute. However, we would like to make sure that you are asking your questions throughout the webcast. If you have a question, please submit it via the Q&A panel located in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. We will be moderating these questions at the conclusion of today's presentation. Also, we will be taking questions over the phone lines. I will come back on the line when the presentation has concluded and give you instructions on how to unmute your line. Today's webcast is being recorded, and the recording will be sent out to all registrants as well as posted to the Data Governance Discussion Board on asug.com. I'd now like to turn it over to our Data Governance volunteer, Jody Macheski, who will introduce our speaker for today. Jody?
Thank you, Kayla. Good afternoon. Before I introduce John, I want to remind everyone that the ASUG Annual Conference is May 14th through the 16th, and we are still accepting abstracts for that conference. The deadline for abstract submission is this Friday. Please let me know if you have any questions about the abstract submittal process. Now it's my pleasure to introduce John Ferraioli, who is Senior Vice President Strategic Accounts for Utopia and also a big supporter of the Data Governance SIG. So John, take it away.
Great. Thanks, Jody. Appreciate it. Good afternoon and good morning, depending on where you are in the country. And appreciate everyone dialing in for this webcast. It was originally scheduled right during the week that Hurricane Sandy hit, and being a Long Islander without power, we decided it would make most sense to switch this to a little bit later date. So thanks for joining. And what we're going to be covering today, as we talk about key strategies for master data governance, kind of the economic benefit of data, how to make the case for it, and how to translate master data governance into hard dollar savings. So as we kick it off, as we go through the deck, from an agenda, one of the key top questions we wanted to cover are before you. And so these are some ideas to share as we go through the agenda. Again, there will be Q&A at the end, so feel free to participate in that capacity. We really want to talk about and understand how can I directly save money and hard dollar impact with master data governance plan in place, outline some of the best practices in enterprise data management, and how to create frameworks for master data governance. And hopefully we'll be able to address this through example, case study. We'll talk about people process. We'll talk about enabling technologies from SAP, and some ideas along the way. So to kick it off, in how do we have an economic impact around data? How do we get business to care? How do we get IT to care about data as we're all working collaboratively to manage data as an asset? Well, first and foremost, when we talk to customers, one of the things we want to get an understanding of, what's the business issue at hand? Where's the pain? Where are the challenges? Is it compliance-based? Is it around optimizing an SAP or a non-SAP process? Is it around saving money with the cost associated with maintaining master data? In many cases, what we find is organizations are seeking to achieve operational efficiencies, achieve reporting integrity, to get to actionable business insight, to get to decision makings, to give them a competitive advantage. And that may be around topics such as new product introduction. It may be around supplier consolidation, so you can achieve things like strategic sourcing and spend performance management, global spend. It might be around inventory optimization or procurement efficiencies. So the underlying message around data is that 80% of a business process is master data. The other percentages are frankly relied or aligned to transactional data or conditional data. So when you look at the breakdown of a business process, such as supply chain, and you're thinking about how do I do demand planning, how do I manage my warehouse management, procurement and inventory, right? It really comes down to that those applications, those business processes, And the decisions, the reporting that comes out of them, are only as good as the data that it executes against. So we always try to map data process to business process and extrapolate that into decision making and whether or not folks, frankly, are going to bet their job on the report. So we always focus on this dimension of the economic impact of data, and there's a couple of ways we can illustrate this. From an issue perspective, business insights, decision making, competitive advantage, operational excellence within SAP are frankly corrupted by poor data integrity. Data has to be governed. You cannot just throw data sets, go through mergers and acquisition, compile data randomly without governance. If you do, you have the perfect example of garbage in and garbage out. And frankly, the issue at hand is that there is gold in them there hills. There is value to be found from mining data, from managing data as an asset, from getting data integrity to the highest levels. But it has to be participated by business and IT together. And the governance organization has to be the lead in this capacity. If people don't see the value, then you're not making enough noise. So part of this example today that we'll show is how to make some noise, how to get people to care, and some strategies around that. First and foremost, if you're working in an organization, I guarantee you that you're going to have somewhere in the organization, you'll have a corporate vision. And that will define who you are as an organization, as a company, or even a line of business within a company. In many cases, you have competitive differentiator laid out, such as product innovation, new product introduction, fast mover adoption in the marketplace, customer loyalty, right? Leveraging intellectual property, or in asset-intensive industries like chemical, oil and gas, utilities, and others. Anybody with a plant, anybody with a mill, anybody with asset-intensive want to get a high return on assets. So what we want to do is, from a data perspective, in getting hard value savings, is get the business people to appreciate the interconnection between data integrity and meeting their corporate advantages, their competitive advantages. In this illustration, we're going to look at, for example, anyone with an asset-intensive environment, with a plant, with a mill, and they want a high return on assets. So the business stakeholders are typically around enterprise asset management and the plant and operations folks who are looking for reliability-centered maintenance. They're looking for the opportunity to maximize life of the asset, have it maintained. You don't want shutdowns in production, and you want continuity. You want frictionless manufacturing. Well, in order to get there, they have to maintain those plants and equipment. But the underlying foundation for enterprise asset management is enterprise information management. And this is where master data governance comes into play. So these folks, these VPs of operations or VPs of manufacturing or plant, are going to be driven by business metrics of how they're measured, how their organizations are measured. And these dimensions may be metrics such as inventory optimization, maintenance costing, your procurement efficiencies, your spare parts costing, and how you run your operations, plant service level agreements on uptime. And so when you look at cost associated with inventory optimization, it's generally accepted that anywhere between 12 to 22% of inventory, you have carrying costs associated with that inventory. So if you have $100 million in inventory and you're running at 20% carrying costs, you've got $20 million in carrying costs. And that's in depreciation, in tax, in inventory, in warehouse costs. And so saving tens of millions of dollars through inventory optimization, or being able to leverage spend, where it's appreciated that you can save anywhere from 1 to 3% on global spend through strategic sourcing initiatives, right, and reduce risk around procurement, is critical to a business operation. But that VP of operations, that VP of plant, has to understand the connection between their business metrics and ultimately, they certainly are going to appreciate their business processes, which are generally executed in an SAP landscape or in another ERP landscape. But those business processes consume master data, and this is where the opportunity to make the connection between the equipment, the BOMs, your vendors, your material master, and your assets, and assign data quality metrics around that data so that your VP of manufacturing can understand that when we get the inventory right, we procure more intelligently. When we get the equipment definition, the material master definitions, the short text, long text description, we procure, we inventory, we manage more efficiently. And that's a hard dollar savings. I'll extend this further with an actual customer example. So these data quality metrics that you see at the bottom, conformity to standards, completeness of the record, consistency of the data. Is it available? Is it relevant? Are there duplicates? What about security and relevance? Relevance meaning, are there inactive records in your production system? You know, inactive vendors in a production SAP environment translates to a couple of things. One, great inefficiency in maintenance, but two, exposure to risk, fraud, and money laundering, because purchase orders can be executed against an inactive vendor in production SAP. So making that connection to the VP of procurement about how you can save money or eliminate risk by having quality data with relevant records versus inactive records is a big opportunity to show your value to the organization. Let's drill down a little bit further. So we took the high-level approach saying, well, the VP of the plant wants to manage inventory better, and you need to have good data integrity in order to procure intelligently. Let's show you what this looks like. This is from one of our customers. They're a liquefied natural gas company, actually in the Middle East. They run a mixed environment of SAP and non-SAP. They're a $20 billion entity. And again, they were making money, but they were seeking to have greater efficiencies, operational excellence. They wanted to achieve greater inventory levels so that they didn't have that 15 to 22% carrying cost associated with it. So we took a look at their data. And next to their data, we took a look at their business processes, their work orders, their plant maintenance processes. We looked at how they procure. And we started making comparisons between business process and data process. And when we exposed the data to them, what we found, this is a stock analysis report out of, in this case, R3. And what you find is that there are 8 functionally equivalent materials here, ball bearings. Some systems it would be bearing ball, other system would be bearing ball bearing, and another system it would be BRNG and other abbreviations. And as you break down the taxonomy in the data model, which is so key to good data governance, we find extensions where this SKF bearing, which is an SKF ball bearing, it's about the size of your fist, was duplicated 8 times. And there are differences in this particular ball bearing, but when we match that against how they use the bearing, this particular bearing has a seal. They were removing the seal and eliminating that piece of additional equipment on the material master. And so, fit for purpose, this functionally equivalent part was being procured 8 different ways, and it should be from 8 different vendors. But what we found in the analysis was there were actually only 7 vendors listed. So even if you wanted to get this ball bearing here, if you can see this on my screen moving, the vendor was blank. And we found different planned delivery times, anywhere from 13 days up through 84 days of delivery time. Now, if you have an 84-day procurement cycle, chances are the people at the plant are going to be procuring more of those items because of the long lead times. Additionally, we found pricing range anywhere from $2.54 up through $19. And so it's very clear to us, but perhaps not as clear to the customer because they were lost in the data mess, that the data was corrupting their procurement efficiencies. The data was affecting their inventory because people were buying more. And one of the interesting things we found is that one of the vendors they were securing this material from was selling them the same functionally equivalent part, this SKF ball bearing, for anywhere from $2.54 for nearly double the price to $4.67. So right up front, when you're talking about hundreds of thousands of material types, and you see a price range from $2 through $19, that's a 700% premium that you're paying, all with different planned delivery times. So the ability for this organization to optimize their procurement, to optimize their inventory, was literally lost. It was lost in the data. So inventory optimization, reduction in carrying costs, spend analytics, strategic sourcing, plant maintenance efficiency, optimizing SAP, getting SAP to run the way you desire it to run, was effectively out the window. It's being compromised by the data. And so the recommendation is business processes are sound. Let's make some tweaks there. But let's look at your data processes. How are you procuring? How are you creating this ball bearing / bearing ball? How are you creating the taxonomy and the data model? Is that complete? Is that a complete record? Is there master data governance being applied? Do you have business rules and standards for how you abbreviate the word bearing? And without that, you see how systems get corrupted, and you're buying the same part, for double the price from the same vendor, in this case Brookhansen, and selling them the same functionally equivalent material for two different prices with two different planned delivery days. So the economic issue was very apparent at this point to help make a business case. And that's one way that we use data to help make a business case, to help illustrate the hard dollar savings that are available to you, and to translate that into a sustainable governance model, because the business can't afford not to meet their business goals that we outlined in one of the first slides. But the only way that they're going to do that is to optimize the data. It's a key component in strategies for optimizing SAP, in cutting costs, in becoming more compliant, and having the right information and the right decisions. And that's what Utopia does, a small outline of who is Utopia. As Jody mentioned, we work very heavily with the ASUG community. We have a global footprint from around, United States, Canada, through Asia Pacific region, Dubai, London, Argentina. And we are a solutions consulting company. We focus primarily on strategy around enterprise data management and data governance. And we look at data as an asset for the life cycle. So it's not just about data migration, or it's not just about a one-time data cleansing, but it's about ongoing data management. And we call this enterprise data lifecycle management. We look at this holistically from creation through our archival. And we were an SAP Services Partner of the Year in 2010. We work hand in hand with SAP around enterprise information management solutions and leverage their technologies. And we're also recognized by Gartner as a thought-leading consultancy, and we've got special recognition around master data management from a process perspective. But ultimately, it is about improving ROI on your ERP and IT investments, on your business analytics solutions, and getting your arms around the data so that HANA can be optimized. HANA not only gives you bad decisions faster with bad data, so we want to prevent that. We want to enable the enterprise with good information so they can make the right decisions, actionable, intelligent decisions. Services line, we cover strategic consulting, enterprise data management strategy through tactical execution. So we do implement tools like business objects, data services, SAP master data governance, OpenText for enterprise content management and archiving. And a host of our services range from data strategy through migration, through governance and archiving, through ETL and data integration and data cleansing work. So if it's about data, Utopia, that's our thing. So laying out how to build a business case, how to use data as an asset, how to make the connection around business process optimization and meeting organizational goals and showing the lineage to data is a key element. And there are frameworks around that we can bring to the table, but an additional framework that we wanted to share with you is what are some of the best practices for master data governance? And what are frameworks for master data governance? What exists and what can be leveraged? Well, right off the bat, a framework for enterprise data lifecycle management suggests that if you're trying to achieve operational excellence or business insight and decision-making, competitive advantages, that's going to be based against a foundation of data. And this foundation of data is really where the core is. This is the foundation. This is what all of your systems and your applications and your reporting tools and HANA will execute against. And it's a combination of structured data, and now with the proliferance of big data hype and excitement around big data, we're looking at unstructured content as well. Okay, and unstructured content could be anything from the Twitter world or Facebook likes, but it could also be real-time telemetric data coming off a well within oil and gas that's showing performance of your drilling operations and mapping that to historical plant maintenance and when you replace parts for optimal yields. Well, if you have real-time telemetry data, that's unstructured data in concert with your historic knowledge around operational management and maintenance. And bringing those two together gives you real-time decision-making. So that's the power of data for maintaining plants and equipment, but to help that VP of operations leverage data intelligently to make the right decision to optimize their yields, to optimize their performance. So enterprise data management has structured and unstructured data, and it does have a life cycle from creating data, migration, managing, distribution, reporting and analytics, and ultimately archiving. These frameworks are interconnected. And so from a solutioning perspective, in what are frameworks around building information governance, around recognizing hard dollar savings, a solution roadmap that we often introduce is, what is the enterprise data strategy? Now, it could be a global view, it could be enterprise-wide, and it could be a massive undertaking. But it could also be a tactical, multi-generational plan, right, based on key improvements to be made in a step-by-step process so that you have a direction. You know what your cadence is. You understand your project charter and where you're going. So establishing a strategy can be enterprise-wide, or it could be tactical within, we're just trying to solve this one particular problem. But have a strategy, have a roadmap. The next is understanding and getting the data, and then from understanding the data, we have evidence that we can show, and then ultimately getting the data clean. And of course, keeping the data clean. So getting the data clean is an event in time. That's one element where I'm going to do a data cleansing exercise. I'm going to clean up my vendor master. Other extensions of that is then, most importantly, keeping the data clean. And then from keeping the data clean, you have a landscape where data can be managed as an asset in a sustainable fashion. That solution roadmap then translates to a little bit more granularity. And so laying out a data strategy in a phased approach, right? Who are the people who are going to govern the data? Who are the folks responsible for the maturation of the governance organization? Who established data standards? What are your data management policies? From there, with that foundation, we can build out and say, let's understand the data. Let's profile it. Let's set data quality metrics against that profiled data so that we can not only establish a metric, but we can manage against that metric. And you can measure against it. You can have insight real time to the integrity of the data and be able to go back to management and say, the decision you're making is valid. The decision that you make around new product introduction, around FDA traceability compliance, is sound. Around the microbiological assays that you have archived on salmonella are validated. Around your procurement cycle and that who can I do the most business with to get the best global price and terms for delivery, and can I meet compliance around reporting for diversity spend or minority spend. So getting your arms around the data and then getting that data clean against your business requirements and your rules, and extending that to MDM at the apex. Now, MDM, in some cases, is a tool. We view master data management as a process. And so there's multiple definitions of MDM, but what it comes down to is how am I managing and governing my data so it has integrity? So there is an economic output to my company. The thing about governance and stewardship, maintenance, and data integration is that there are many different ways in which data can be governed. You could have a centralized organization, you could have a federated organization, you could have a blend of the two, you could have a decentralized organization, you could establish lean data governance. The choices are endless. What it comes down to is that what's going to work in your particular organization and what's going to be valid so that whether it's siloed data stewardship or enterprise-wide data stewardship, it is about tweaking and making adjustments against these frameworks. Frameworks are a wonderful thing, and they exist. The ASUG community that Jody has led and others, Bob Bernstein and others, Carolyn Picton and others have participated in and led is a wonderful community. But what works for one doesn't work for all. So it's important to map these disciplines against what's going to work within your company. The other thing is knowing who you are as a company. So I can assure you that this is not the first time you're seeing a maturity model. The question is that from a maturity model, is that how is it leveraged? Do you understand your organization's ability to execute? Are you at an elemental level? You're just getting started? Have you had a program in place that you're looking to optimize, or are you at a strategic, pervasive level? The key thing is that for every level of excellence, it can be measured against and defined as to where are we today and where do we need to be tomorrow. And if, in fact, I make an investment in information governance and I move progressively, let's say from a level 2 to a level 3, what is the economic output of that? What's the benefit to the business? How does this help the organization make money, save money, or become more compliant with the decisions they make out of the data that's being consumed? So holistically, organizations can be structured many, many different ways. This is an example of one of our customers who did not have a shared services organization. So without that shared services organization, we wanted to tailor an enterprise data management group that had a leadership team for executive sponsorship, always a key consideration, a global business data officer, someone from the business who had authority, who understood the business operations, and that could influence the import and the critical nature of data into day-to-day operations, to get people to care, to have them understand the only way you cut inventory, the only way you reduce days sales outstanding is that you don't send out invoices that have erroneous tax IDs. Because if you have bad tax IDs on your invoices, or you charge the customer the wrong amount, or you ship the wrong product to the wrong location, those invoices are not paid. And that translates to tens of millions of dollars of days sales outstanding for the CFO. To get the CFO to care, they need to see that data. So they need folks, data trustees, at an enterprise level, and they can go by line of business or by object, so product, customer, vendor, plant, etc. And then there's an operational focus, which is who are the folks doing the data design architecture? Who creates a record? How is that record maintained? How is it updated? Who's responsible for archiving? CFOs don't like fraud. Inactive vendors in production SAP translate to risk for fraud and money laundering. If your tax IDs are erroneous, you could be overpaying your taxes automatically without you knowing it. It happened to a very large CPG company in the Midwest, and they were overpaying their taxes four years in a row. Millions and millions of dollars because the system didn't know better. So this organizational structure, the people, has to be tailored to what's going to work within your organization. This is just one particular example. When we spoke about a maturity model, right, of elemental through strategic, it's important to measure that against key metrics, key processes. So you have processes such as data quality, data management, governance, the people, business controls, technical data management, security. All of these are key considerations, analytics and reporting. All of these are key considerations. The key is to measure, to set up metrics that can be measured and then ultimately managed. So information governance needs discipline, needs needs an ROI, but it also needs operational metrics that people can be measured against, that you can manage to. So going from, let's say in this company, a level 1 or level 2 in certain categories across these enterprise data lifecycle maturity elements, you can look at your current assessment and then set goals for how do we reach a level 3? What qualifies us as a level 3? And again, what's the economic value of moving up the chain? How do you get to the next level? Well, if you're a level 1 organization and you're just getting started, you can't have people coming to you saying, I need Six Sigma data quality, or you need to execute these plays. Understanding your level and ability to execute. And as many people have heard, and I'll share it again, I've coached my kids in football, my boys. And when they were 5 and 6 years old, right, we couldn't say to them, hey, go take the ball and throw it 35 yards downfield. You could write up the play, but it would never happen. And in a like manner, you could write up the right play about data stewardship or governance or business process management or data creation, master data governance, in creating master data with consistency, with conformity to standards. But if you don't have the right architecture, if you don't have the right standards in place, if you don't have the people to govern, if you don't have the enabling technology to enforce rules and policy, it's like telling a 5-year-old football player, go throw the ball 35 yards. It's just not going to happen. Then as you mature as an organization, you get more sophisticated. And along each level of sophistication, you get greater and greater achievement. And so it's critical to understand where you are at an organizational level for information governance versus just, hey, let's throw in a tool and hope it works. Because tools, frankly, are the easy part. It's really about mapping and aligning, and this is a reference architecture, mapping and aligning your business processes, your SAP and non-SAP application framework, your systems integrations framework, along with your enterprise data frameworks. We call this a 4 squares reference architecture. It's aligning data processes with business processes. If you have an SAP landscape and they say in the halls of IT, a big engineering drawing that says, hey, we're going live on CRM in the next, in 12 months from now, well, guess what? You should have a conceptual data model aligned to the business processes, understand the reporting requirements from the VP of sales, from the VP of marketing, right, from the chief customer officer, as to what are they trying to achieve with the new CRM system, and what does the data model have to look like? What fields need to be introduced to support this continuity? I was at a customer yesterday, a utility, and they're trying to roll out contract lifecycle management and strategic spend analysis, spend performance management. Well, the data model they were using isn't properly supporting the reporting requirements and the operational requirements for those systems. So aligning the data model and the data processes to the business processes and the application framework is key. It gets people thinking. It gets IT saying, how do I make sure when I roll out CRM, I go live without disruption? I go live without users not having trust in the system because the data doesn't line up, or that manual operations have to usurp automated processes, costing us more time and money and more headaches. So enterprise objectives, is not just the business people, but it's IT being efficient. It's looking at things like industry drivers, right? So, what's required for reporting compliance. And then incorporating that holistically, data with process, with your application roadmap, with your reporting roadmap. And that institutes program planning so that people understand what's most important to get successful go-lives is that it's very often not the data. Very often not the application. It's not the process. It's the data that's corrupting it. So this framework aligns business and IT, but data with process and apps. This is from ASUG. This is a framework for enterprise data management. This is what the ASUG Data Governance SIG developed many years ago and continues to endorse because it addresses multiple dimensions of how data is managed. Architecture, the when, the how, the where data is entered, stored, transmitted, and reported. architecturally, who has control? The standards, common data definitions. How do you abbreviate the word St. John Street? All right? We heard an example of a transportation company, a wholesale distributor, that had $2 million in additional charges because the abbreviations for avenue or street or court were not standard. And so the delivery companies would stop and charge them a service fee, $50 at a time or so, because they couldn't understand where they were supposed to deliver the goods. Well, when you added all that up, it was a $2 million impact just because standard definitions weren't in place. And you go back to your CFO, and he was the one who presented it. You go back to the CFO and say, hey, $2 million a year just because we can't abbreviate street the right way. That's going to mean some real hard dollars and people looking to enforce policy. Governance are the people, strategic data policy, the data ownership, the roles and responsibilities, and quality are those quality metrics that I outlined at the beginning. How do you know the data is at an acceptable level of quality? Does it have to be Six Sigma? Is that economically feasible? And then ultimately change management and enablement, right? This is your deployment. How do you get people to care? How do you get people to buy into new data processes? When you combine these two frameworks together, we see operational excellence. We see the ability to manage data intelligently. We see the ability to do maintenance and management of the data more efficient because you have frameworks that are defined around your direction, your strategy, your multi-generational plan. You have business alignment because you've made the business case. And now you have organizational alignment saying this is going to work best at our company. And these are my rules, and these are my policies for managing data intelligently, aligned with IT, so that you go live without disruption. You have trust in the reports. You can make an economic case for it. And these frameworks can be leveraged for any object, customer object, vendor object, material object, asset, financial, up and down the line. It's repeatable processes, repeatable frameworks. When you talk about understanding the data, right? We talked about building the business case and getting people on board and setting up a strategy. Now let's look at understanding the data. Well, SAP Information Steward is a technology which has been around for many, many years and now in the form of Information Steward allows you to profile and analyze your data. And the best thing you could possibly do is take a snapshot of your data to make a business case to say, look, you want to have spend analytics, you want to save 1 to 3% on spend, and we spend $4 billion a year? Well, 1% of $4 billion, last time I checked, was millions and millions and millions of dollars. And so getting our arms around how we can save some hard dollar savings is we're never going to get there if we don't have mandatory fields, complete. If the completeness of the record is quite suspect, if we're seeing duplicates in the record. So Information Steward allows you to, as an enabling technology, to set up business rules, set up data quality metrics, and interrogate the data. Not as a one-time event, but as part of an information governance process. And then going back and tackling, obviously if your completeness in this example is solid green, but your conformity to standards is a 5.6, that's very low on a scale of 10, well, you want to focus on conformity to standards. Why? Because you don't want to have, in the case of the wholesale distributor, $2 million in additional charges because people couldn't find the right address. And so that helps sustain the data. The other thing you want to look at is business rules. All data has business rules, but the question is, it's going to help support compliance, it's going to support regulation, it'll support reporting, it'll support process. But this vendor master data, as you can see, only 9% of the business rules were effectively enforced in a consistent manner. The remaining of the rules are quite suspect. So the question is, do you need the rule? Should we get rid of the rule? How do we streamline our operations around data? Data governance and information governance should be more streamlined versus more complex. So understand the rules. When you have this evidence, then you can say, okay, by the way, you're not using vendor hierarchies. That's going to corrupt your ability to do spend analytic. If you can't do spend analytic, you won't save the tens of millions of dollars. So we may want to start thinking about, cleansing and standardizing the data. If we found that vendor master records on the second bar were inactive in production systems, this is one of our customers' data. Well, archiving is an important consideration. This will help you determine where the priorities are. In this case, you may want to start looking at open text as an enabling technology with an archive policy. In this case, another customer had duplicate tax IDs in Latin America. Well, duplicate tax IDs translates to you overpaying your taxes in an automated way. That's not a good thing. So a well-charted archival plan, an enterprise data management program, right, can get you the correct tax values. And this can be enriched. But ultimately, it translates to, can we do it in a way that's automated? And this is where technologies like MDG come into play. These are all enabling technologies from SAP, but most important is not so much the tool, that just enforces your policy, and that enforces your rules. With data services, as you know, it's a world-class ETL solution and world-class data quality solution. You can structure data and get the data model for unstructured content and put it into a structured format, building a taxonomy and a data model that business operators can achieve and manage. When we talk about cleaning and maintaining the data, particularly around master data governance, I'm going to focus a little bit now on process as well as technology. So SAP has a technology called SAP Master Data Governance. This is a ABAP-based tool for SAP environments that allows you the orchestration of process and enforcement of policy for the creation of master data. It's native out-of-the-box integration. It has an infrastructure footprint which is very light and allows you to leverage your business rules, your policies for validation and authorization in an automated way. But it's about making sure that the right data going into the production system is right. When we at Utopia do an implementation of MDG or any master data solution, the first thing we want to look at is a strategy phase. We want to get our arms around what is the integrity of the data. So that profiling dimension. We want to understand what the business climate is. Who is responsible for the data? Who has the vision? Who has the roadmap? Who are the trustees? We identify standards and the data model. And we look for data governance to be consistent across the board. And most importantly, in this planning phase, you'll notice that nearly 80% of the effort is in our design, strategy, and standards phase. The actual deployment phase is rather light. And the reason is because we're addressing things like with MDG and master data governance, is how do we create data with integrity, with the right approval, with the right validation, with the right report tracking and the right business rules and process flow. And getting this factor right up front means that from a deployment phase, it's actually quite streamlined because we have our roadmap, we have our blueprint. And so anytime you're entering into information governance or data management governance best practices, the best practices are right in front of you. Establish the data flow. Do the analysis on the data. Look for the weak points in the data. Establish your business rules. Make sure that those business rules are valid, timely, relevant. And the process flows around validation, who's approving, and what your reporting output requirements are. By setting up this best practice, by establishing this framework, right, your implementation of the technology becomes second nature. There's a lot of benefit with MDG as a tool, and the reason why we like it so much is because MDG, the tool, translates to master data governance and master data management, the process. It's integrated, it's reusable content. The business rules that you use for data profiling, the business rules that you use for data quality are mapped specifically into the business rules you use for creation. and you have consistency in the data, you're ensuring data quality. Every drop of new data entered into your landscape, once the data is clean, remains in state. And so you can also do mass maintenance on the records. It's integrated with NetWeaver MDM. It's integrated with data services. It actually uses a runtime of data services. But ultimately, when you talk about master data governance, the tool, it's a lot about reusing standards, business rules, validations, and approvers. And the benefits are you're not going to allow anyone to get access to MMO1 or 03 and just start being very, very creative. So it's about locking down and enforcing governance around how data is created. So as we close out the presentation, we'll have time for Q&A. I wanted to address these three questions, and hopefully I have, but I've laid them out again. So how do I directly save money with master data governance plan in place? Leveraging your own data as evidence for your business case, right? Showing people the impact that data has on their decision making, right? 8 different ball bearings for 8 different prices, not a good idea. Let's consolidate that record. Let's have a single view. Align data and business processes to outcomes and decision making. Help people on the business side understand the impact that garbage in means garbage out. You're not going to reduce day sales outstanding if your invoices are filled with errors. What are the best practices in enterprise data management? Well, in our belief, there are multiple published best practices. I showed a number of them here today. They can be, but they have to be applied and measured against your own organization's ability to execute. A 6-year-old football team can't throw the ball 35 yards. Even if the kid could throw it 35 yards, he wouldn't have the kids blocking. So you have to have an organization mapped to what best practices you want to apply. You have to have balance between the two. It's about people and process, and then ultimately leveraging and enabling technology. And then how do I create a framework for master data governance? I shared with you a reference architecture on applications and systems and business processes aligned to data management. But then I also showed a data lifecycle framework that says look at the lifecycle of data from creation through archival. And we looked at enterprise data management framework, that wheel, which talks about architecture considerations, data standards, data governance, quality, metrics, and change management. So that because there are multiple frameworks, leverage them, tailor them to your business, to your requirements, and then ultimately lather, rinse, and repeat. It's a repeatable process. What you do for customer, you can leverage for vendor. What you do for vendor, you can do for financial. There may be different nuances, but these are repeatable frameworks. One last element on Utopia. A lot of things I shared today, we can illustrate for you in a cloud-based environment we call Utopia Labs. It's a demo center. It shows all the SAP EIM solutions. We have HANA running in the cloud. And we can take your data and show you your data before and after. We can show you the process flows. We can demonstrate MDG process flows. So we'd be happy to share with you taking your own data, putting it in a live demonstration environment, and showing you what's possible in your journey for enterprise data management. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to our host, and I thank you for your time, and I'd open it up to any questions or comments. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, John. Our first question is, could you detail about SAP's MDG product, its benefits, features, what should be the criteria for going MDM versus MDG?
Okay. So I did have a slide in here, which is an SAP slide, right, on MDG. Now, MDG, the tool versus MDM, think of it this way. If you have a distributed environment with SAP and non-SAP systems, and consider these in this analogy that they're glasses of water, right, all around the table, 5 glasses of water. What MDM does, NetWeaver, SAP NetWeaver MDM, what that solution does is has an excellent platform for taking all that water, all that data, if you will, from your distributed landscape and consolidating it into a single pitcher of water. Now the water, or the data, has to be cleaned before it's entered into the pitcher. So that's where information steward and data services come into play. But in this example that I showed with the ball bearing, you could have ball bearings in one system and ball bearings in another system, or it could be Tom Smith in one system and Thomas Smith in another. What NetWeaver MDM does is it consolidates and harmonizes that data to a single view of the truth within a centralized repository. And then you can distribute from that centralized repository a single version of truth to multiple different systems and reporting outputs across the enterprise. Now, what MDG does, SAP Master Data Governance does, is that Master Data Governance is really designed for that single drop at a time where data is created, one new drop of water at a time, into your ERP, ECC environment. And it's going to be cleansed, it's going to be pure, it's going to be perfect water at the point of creation. So MDM is a consolidation and harmonization in a distributed landscape. MDG ensures data integrity at the point of creation. One other note about MDG. MDG will say, depending on what high percentage of data in an SAP landscape, that ECC can be your central master data repository. And that works in many, many cases. But as anyone's dealt with Z tables or different distributed data models or hierarchies or unstructured content, ECC is not necessarily ideal as a data repository because of that. So you can use MDM as your central repository and NetWeaver MDG as your creation, or you could use ECC as the repository, and MDG can do mass updates to the records within ECC. So a couple of choices there. They can work in harmony or they can work independent. Hopefully that answered the question.
The next question is from Matt. It says, how does MDG complement NWMDM? Does an MDG have its own repository?
What was the last part? Doesn't MDG?
G have its own depository?
Yeah, and that's almost an identical question. So, and it's a good question. It's something that a lot of folks, and in fact, have maybe not heard. So, MDM, separate database, its own repository, consolidating and harmonizing data across the enterprise, predominantly heterogeneous landscapes. You can have, like, for example, if you call something soda in the Northeast and pop in the Southeast, well, you can call soda in one region, pop in another. You can give it a customer number 12345 in the U.S. and AK 1933B for Germany. And you could have a consolidated record in that MDM repository. With MDG, the tool that SAP, which is based in ABAP and has an SAP code set, this is for data creation and data maintenance. And the general rule of thumb, I believe that SAP will promote and that we will promote, is that based on the higher percentage of data which is going to be consumed by your applications that are SAP, is very well adapted to using ECC as the central repository. So if you have a large distributed heterogeneous landscape with multiple hierarchies and unstructured data, MDG is a real winner. If you're primarily SAP and you just want to create data with consistency and then put that data into ECC, then MDG would be a good fit. But in my opinion, there's no reason why you can't take MDG for create with all the conformity to standards, with all the business rules being applied at the point of creation, routed, validated, existence check. Once the golden record is created, you can put it into ECC, or if you're in a distributed landscape, you can create for non-SAP using MDG. Now, the reason I'm going back and forth on this is because over the years, architecturally, SAP has really opened up its architecture. And so you have many, many different choices. And just as, a classic example, two different shoe companies, one uses centralized master data governance, another one used decentralized. you've got architectural choices with MDG and MDM. And the answer, of course, is what is going to work best for your company? Is it widely distributed? That's an MDM play. Is it centralized and everything's in ECC? Well, maybe MDG is best because it'll use ECC as the repository. Hopefully that helps.
Great. At this time, I'd like to welcome our participants to, we have another question come in? Oh, no. At this time, I'd like to instruct our attendees. If you'd like to ask John a question out loud over the phone line directly, you can do so by dialing *6. We do have about 5 minutes left, so we have time for just a few more questions. Okay. Well, if there are no further questions, that will conclude today's webcast. On behalf of ASUG headquarters, I would like to thank our speaker for today, as well as the Data Governance Leadership Team for hosting this event, and thank you all for your participation. As mentioned earlier, the slides and the recording link will be emailed to you and will be accessible on the Data Governance Discussion Board on asug.com. Thank you all again, and wishing you a great rest of the day. Thank you.